Brand new science fiction. I told you, sometime in October. And this album is damn good. As of course, this opening track lit me up. Definitely somewhat different from what you normally expect from Brand New. And very drony too. But it's not even like my favorite track on the album. It was definitely one that was different. It kind of made me wonder how the rest of the album was going to go. And it keeps going. It lit me up was mostly about some trippy experience of some sort, you know, through whatever character was kind of being played off through this track. Can't Get It Out, the follow-up song, which the funny thing is this album never had a single. But I could still find songs that to me point out like they could be singles. Like Can't Get It Out. And which is honestly explains a lot of the songwriting in terms of for Jesse, as far as Jesse Lacey would say, because he's usually more dour, depressed kind of stuff. But it's not like they didn't try at one point to try to be more optimistic sounding. I mean, their I Am a Nightmare and You Are a Miracle comes off a little more optimistic, I guess. In their Waste, definitely one of my favorite tracks. Just, I mean, every night you've been tripping out. If only I had the fucking lyrics sheet to help me remember the rest of it. Just let it go. If it's breaking your heart and nothing is fun, don't lose hope, my son. This is the last one. Just something about that line just hits me, man. It's just one of those. It's one of those tracks that just kind of has that sort of umph to it. That, sure, maybe there's not as much umph in comparison to other tracks you would expect from their past albums. Though the way this album comes off, it's just wow. And of course, Could Never Be Heaven. Definitely one of the better songs. Be Heaven Without You just has this sort of certain vibe to it. And even this line that also deals with, you know, thoughts on how he is about his beliefs spiritually, as he's technically, though, he's kind of Christian in terms of his beliefs, but Jesse Lacey doesn't come off as such, and he kind of comes off, I guess, as you've probably heard in some of his lyrical content in the past with Brand New, kind of douchey. But, you know, it's not that he doesn't mean well at moments, I guess. And I mean, Could Never Be Heaven is just really more of a, it is almost a love song more to God in its own right. Like, he still believes in God, or he's at least agnostic, I guess, maybe. I don't know if I would say Christian so much, but And even a line of done in the sense of a cardinal going as far as to say God is dead, and him replying, "Get out of my head." Saying, I believe, but doesn't mean you should, even though you don't believe, doesn't mean you should force me not to, or something like that. It's in that kind of way, and in the sense there could never be heaven without you referring to God himself. So, of course, follow-ups tracks, Same Logic, Teeth is pretty dang good. 137 kind of, I guess it's 51 deal with some certain, like, one of them deals with something that's kind of apocalyptic, but one also deals with a certain, I think 137 is the one that kind of comes off super, is one of those first tracks, I think, that starts to get real, that technically is in the middle of this album, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, no. Well, about around the middle of this album is when the really climaxes with 137 hitting as hard as Brand New knows how to. And then following that up with one of their a more heavier type of track with Out of Mana. Now, I can't really say lyrically what this is truly about, but it's not like it matters because some of the guitar licks on between those two tracks is something that you would come to expect kind of sort of out of not only what you would expect from them, more so from Devil and God, but also even Deja Entendu, dare I say. In the Water, which kind of does go back to some of certain themes, I guess, Daisy had in terms of like the elements of nature. And in fact, even having to end this track with a sort of voiceover segue callback to a certain particular track off of Daisy, actually. And I guess some of these other tracks kind of do. Desert is one that honestly, or really deserting, either or is what they mean to say, I guess. Or I think it's desert, not desert, but whatever. The thing about this track is that it really kind of goes into the mindset of someone that's more on the conservative, God-fearing type of guy, but is done in such a way that he's not so much just God-fearing. He's kind of putting more fear in. He kind of shows the dark, but in the sense that it shows more of a darker side of humanity, or at least the lack thereof of humanity. And just this sense of like self-absorbed, kind of overzealously religious type people that are kind of the crux of the world, and if you will. In terms of how, especially going as far as to talk about if something were to happen when it came to how one of his own, like, finding out that one of your kids is like gay, and just, that old school mentality of people who are just so afraid of change, and just kind of going with the flow of all these, don't come running to me when they're coming for you, or when they're gunning for you, and don't come running to me when they're gunning for you. Kind of just, it's very, it really kind of can hit you in a bad spot if you hear a song like this, especially if you are a very conservative type of guy or something. I mean, even the extent of, dealing with people who are gay. I mean, see these boys kissing boys with their mouths in the street. My boy up to be a righteous man, I made it clear to him what fear of God means. And to the extent of where he ends up calling off once the sun seems to finally come out or so to him, his response is abomination. That's enough to it's a good enough song to get under your skin. Though the follow-up of No Control doesn't really do much. And 451's pretty good. I mean, what I really like more is In the Water. Is just, I love this bluesy sort of, this bluegrass, bluesy kind of vibe to it. Almost country-ish in an old school kind of way, neo-traditional style. More folky, bluegrassy, country sort of, even bluesy to an extent, sort of mixture. More bluesy in the sense of like harmonica use. One of the best things that came out August, harmonica-wise, outside of whatever Steven Wilson had to put out, No Control was fine. It's kind of something you typically get, but it's just there. I still like the track, don't get me wrong, but there's not much to it compared to all these other tracks, the more meaty elements lyrically is what really brings it out, I think 137 itself had something about I'm trying to think, what was it? It was something with dealing with, this apocalyptic idea of just dealing with these bombs, and just, man, I'm forgetting the line, and forgive me for that, but you'll know when you hear that line, which they play a couple times it's definitely one of those ones that hits you a little bit. Oh, it's let's all go play Nagasaki. We can all get vaporized. It's like, damn. And just, and to the extent of ending, I guess, with how I've learned to love the bomb, it's like, what the? It's like, it's just, the entire album in its own right is just trippy as hell. It just takes what Devil and God kind of was, but just turn it up to 11 and crank up the insanity up to 11. But kind of make it far more digestible than Devil and God, and definitely far more than Daisy was. Not nearly as experimental. Just take Daisy and try to be more radio friendly, and in the sense of more of a Devil and God meets Deja Entendu. In fact, they were experimenting with those albums, and it definitely shows with this. 451 is pretty good. I think it has something to do with the terrorist attack, or like the plane, or maybe 137 was that. But Batter Up is kind of its own little thing of kind of how people have been, I guess, with the band in places, and it's sort of a pretty damn good closing track. It's honestly the longest of tracks, and the segue they used to close off this track is definitely something in and of itself, and especially the usage of like the more lightning or thunderous kind of sound to kind of bring an eerie feel to the track and all that. But once again, overall, I really enjoy science fiction, and I think it's once again another classic and massive amongst Brand New's own discography, and a classic and an album we've honestly needed this year, and maybe ever, if anything, you know. And once again, as I would say, the album definitely rocks, though I'm not entirely sure if I can say it is better than Deja, but I honestly think it comes close. It definitely finds a way to be better, not only Daisy or your favorite weapon, but even Devil and God, for sure. And that to me says a lot, even though a lot of people are considering it a little bit weaker, not weaker than Daisy, but I disagree with that. If anything, it's better than Daisy. Even if you're not going to consider it better than Devil and God or Deja, at least admit that this album honestly comes off a lot better and a lot easier to sink into than that of Daisy itself. Some people, it will probably have to grow on them because they'll think this is not what you expect from Brand New, but honestly, if you really dove deep into what Brand New had to offer in their past discography, this is not going to really be all that new to you. And I hope you, and once again, guys, what did you guys think of this album? You finally glad I finally reviewed this damn thing? Awesome, great surprise that came out this year. And, yeah, awesome album, regardless. And I just love to want to hear this album again, and I can't wait to talk about some other albums that are coming out this year, or have come out this year instead. Might put it in the random recommendation list, but for now I think I'll probably talk about a few movies. In fact, I will talk about another one coming up in a little bit, once I'm done here. And as always, and once again, comment below, let me know. Rock the like button with thrust if you must. Please, once again, though I forget sometimes, please check out my Facebook page, which I will leave a link as well down in the description below. As always, guys, keep it random, keep it real, keep it rocking. And I'll see you guys in the next video, which will be for The Foreigner. So check that out. Take care, y'all.